4, 3, 2, 1.
Thank you, everyone. Such a pleasure to have you all with us for another installment of the Law News series, presented courtesy of the West Indies American Day Carnival Association, RIAGA, in conjunction with Melnia Portis Law PC. I am Melnia Portis, and I am your host this evening. We will be addressing the topic of handling deceased affairs post-COVID, the court, the insurance, and the bank. And I am sure all of us are aware or know someone personally who was affected by the COVID and who may have suffered a loss of a loved one, a family friend, or a colleague or an associate. Today, we are going to be presenting information to help you to get through the process of what to do with that person's affairs, their estate, their money, their property, their assets, whether it be bank accounts, books, houses, motor vehicles, even trust funds for kids, anything that the person would have had in their name. We will be addressing what you would do with those assets, which is collectively called the estate of the deceased. So you will hear terms such as decedent or deceased. That would be the person who would have passed away. You would hear terms such as heir. That would be the person who will be benefiting from the estate of the deceased. And that could include persons such as a spouse, children. In some instances, it can also extend to parents and siblings. You will also hear reference to the term executor or administrator. That will be the person or persons who will be making an application to the court to obtain what is called a probate or what is also called letters of administration. The difference between the two is simple. In the instance where the deceased person had a will, the executor would apply to the court for letters of probate. In the instances where there is no will, the administrator would apply to the court for letters of administration. The other thing that you need to be aware of, in the event that the estate of the deceased is a small estate, that's less than $50,000, they can also apply for what is called voluntary administration here in New York. And we have attorneys that will provide additional information on those processes. So to get started, I want to tell you that I'm very excited because we have a very distinguished panel today. We have the esteemed and knowledgeable Harriet Thompson, who is the current co-surrogate in Kings County Court. We also have the Honorable Antwerp Jones, who's very knowledgeable and experienced attorney in estate. And then we have Ms. Lancaster, who is an experienced insurance agent with New York Life, to serve as our panelist today. And they will be imparting a lot of information to us to help us get through the process of what to do with the assets and the estate of our loved one who has passed away. Just as a background for our panel, we have Ms. Rhonda Lancaster. Now, I've known her personally for over 20 years. She has been in the insurance business for just as long. She's a licensed agent with New York Life here in New York and in other states. And she provides insurance contracts and policies for both life insurance and other types of insurance. She can also assist you with information for college planning and savings and retirement. Ms. Lancaster is distinguished in the sense that she is part of the elite program in New York Life. And I welcome Ms. Lancaster to speak to us today on how to collect insurance proceeds in the event of someone passing away and how an insurance policy can assist you in paying for funeral expenses. Ms. Lancaster.
Thank you, Ms. Curtis. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, and welcome to my other panelists. It's indeed a privilege to be here, especially in the age of COVID and everything that has been happening in our society recently. There's some things to remember when there is a death in the family. Coping with the death of a loved one is never an easy thing, and there's some information that we're given, at least today, some information to help you manage immediate needs, as well as some of the items that are often overlooked when that happens. So the first step, I would say the first call that we usually get is the life insurance agent. Be it if the person had a life insurance policy, or you knew at some point in the past that I visited your home or in my early years, or whether that you know that there's a relationship. That's the first call I get. It's Rhonda or Miss Lancaster, ex-IRC died, I mean, died today. Does she have a policy? Oftentimes, one of the first steps in insurance agent that we would actually say to our clients is make sure that the family members know where things are, so that we are not getting that call whether there is a policy or not. So there is a list. Today is a short or space. I don't think we have enough time to give a full list of things that should be in order. But one of the things that should be there should be some sort of contact information as to, I have a life insurance policy. This is my life insurance agent's name.
Could everyone please mute? Thank you. Continue, Ms. Lancaster.
So there should be a document, maybe preferably on the fridge. As insurance agents, those of us who've been in the business a long time, we would give, which is a checklist of important professionals in your life. So you'll have Rhonda's contact information, you will have Melania's contact information, your attorney's information, and your accountant. We are sometimes, or I may be biased, the three most important people in your life. Of course, judge are important also, but we're hoping that they never get to you. But we are the people that you should have that information. So the first call, when I do get that call, it's either to confirm that there is a policy or to say, oh, I'm sorry, mom lapsed that policy some time ago. And then, so if there is a policy, there are three documents that we would usually ask for, three first documents. First, we would ask for the original death certificate, or if the claim is under $50,000, the insurance company can go ahead and actually pay that claim without a death certificate by calling the funeral home, just to ensure that, to confirm that that death did occur. So that takes to the second call that is actually made, and that's a call to the funeral home. When making arrangements, I would say usually the funeral home, you will bring along, if it's applicable, I would say, the deed of a grave plot. Some persons may have a grave plot. Some may have prepaid cremation documents. Some may actually have military discharge papers. So this often provides sometimes a small discount or a stipend. And any other written instructions that the deceased may have. When it comes, typically friends and family will go to funeral homes, and in American society they're asked, is there a life insurance policy? And they tend to lodge that policy. As an insurance agent, I am biased. I oftentimes say negotiate without the insurance policy. So therefore we will get the true cost of the funeral. Because during grief, we would want bells and whistles. We want everything. And usually the funeral could, amount to much more than it would be if negotiated without the policy. My friend who has a funeral home would disagree with me. She said that's not true. But from my experience, I would say to you, negotiate without the policy. And it's also very, very important to have a relationship with a life insurance agent. Therefore, we can facilitate that process. When a death does occur, after that call is made to me, and if there is a policy, I can start that process of having either the death certificate, or if it's not hot, if you do not have it as yet, work with your funeral home and get a working copy to start that process. Only 2 weeks ago, a friend of the father of a friend passed away, and we were able to get that policy paid within 2 days at New York Life, and only with an agent. So that call was made. I called it, we actually called in the claim. There was no death certificate required. The beneficiaries were on the other end of the line. We confirmed their names, date of birth, social security number, the funeral home that they had taken the body to. We then called the funeral home, and that very day, New York Life was able to approve that check. The only thing that stopped the beneficiaries getting the check on that day was because it takes 24 hours for us to be able to process and print that check. By the next day, we were able to send it off by UPS. So it is very important for you to have a relationship with your agent, someone like myself who can facilitate that process for you. We have, quickly, I know my time is going, but also when it comes to beneficiaries, make sure, I would say, for those of you who have policies, that you do not have minors as the beneficiary. And that will, I'm sure Ms. Curtis will touch on that. And that's where the Honorable Judge will come in, where we oftentimes would need court documents before we can pay a claim or before an assignment. And sorry, just marking quickly, if you should give the proceeds directly to the funeral home, there is an assignment of benefit that is needed by the funeral home that is sent to us. With an insurance agent, we can quickly help you to facilitate that process and to make things, the process a lot smoother. And usually I guess one of the questions that do come up, and it may come up a little later, is what if we do not know what if our loved one had a policy? How can you find it? There is no national database of life insurance policies. So therefore, there are a few steps, and maybe if I have some time later, Mel, I can go through that, or what are the steps, or where we can look for documents, or how we can help find a policy if you are uncertain if one exists. So Ms. Curtis, I'll pass that back to you.
Thank you, Ms. Lancaster. Feel free to post that information in the chat with respect to where they can look to locate a policy if they are unsure whether their loved one has such a policy.
Sure, I'll give some guidelines.
Yeah, thank you for that very brief and informative snapshot of what you need to do with respect to the life insurance policy. And now we want to move on to the lawyer amongst us who has most experience, more than myself, Mr. Antor Jones. Mr. Jones is the founder of Antor P. Jones, and he's located in Brooklyn, New York. His primary area of practice covers, amongst other things, advising fiduciaries and successful individuals with respect to income and estate taxation matters. His practice also involves complex post-mortem taxation issues, in addition to insurance trust and estate matters. He has done extensive work concerning annuity reporting requirements for qualified domestic trust, in addition to how specifically marital deductions operate with respect to such trust, where there are foreign spouse in a country that has tax treaty with the U.S. Mr. Jones has also represented beneficiary in several trust matters that have been in existence for over 40 years that were subsequently decanted. He protected the interests of his ward by carefully reviewing the documents and the tax returns for those two trusts. He's also practiced before the United States Tax Court and the IRS. He has his master's in taxation from the New York Law School and has published several articles on subject matter that we're talking about, estate. So Mr. Jones, I want to welcome you today to our panel to speak on the processes of administration, voluntary administration, and probate, what heirs and executors need to know, and what documents are required in order to pay debts and transfer assets.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for the introduction and good evening. Honorable Harriet Thompson, And thank you for inviting me, Ms. Cordes. So what do you do when you see folks dancing on better than Michael Jackson on the Q train, the D train, or the N train, or the R train when it's going over Manhattan Bridge? What do? Do you dance with them? Do you hope you don't get hit when you're dancing? Or do you give them $1? You give them $1, right? So let's remember that. So voluntary administration is when folks die and their estate is $50,000 or under, right? And if the estate is worth $50,000 or under, you can apply for voluntary administration with the surrogate if the person died in New York. Okay, it's a very, very simple process. If you're eligible to do it, you'll file. You'll come into the court. Traditionally, you come into the court with a death certificate and you file an affidavit. You'll write out an affidavit there in the court, and you pay $1 to as a filing fee. And this is important. We'll talk about it. So when you go in, now, just so you know, this voluntary administration process doesn't work for real property. So if you have a house, you can't get power over the dead person's house with voluntary administration. Okay, but let's go back to the affidavit. Okay, so what you're going to do is that you're going to fill out the affidavit, asks for your name, your address, etc. It's going to ask for information regarding the decedent, that is the dead person, their date of death, their name, their address, whether they had a will or not. You're going to give information about what are called distributees. Distributees are people who are, and what their relationship is with the decedent. You're going to talk about the description of the property the decedent had. Oftentimes, it will just be a bank account, let's say Chase, or at some other bank. You're going to list the names of creditors and amounts owed that the creditors of the decedent. So maybe the decedent owed Con Ed, $300. You're going to list that creditor there, and then you're going to get your signature notarized at the end. Right? And once again, you're going to need an original sealed death certificate, right? And so you come to the court with an original sealed death certificate. You fill out this affidavit, which you can also get online on your courts. Right? And once again, you're going to need no bond required. No bond is required. That's important. If you have an administration for over $50,000, you might need a bond. In this case, you're not going to need a bond. All right. And who can sign the affidavit? If there's no will, then the surviving adult spouse can. And if there is no surviving adult spouse, then it's going to be a competent adult child or grandchild. And if there are none of those, it's going to be a parent. If there are none of those, it's going to be a brother and sister. And if it's none of those, it's going to be a niece, a nephew, an aunt, or an uncle. And if it's none of those, you can get guardian of the property of an infant, somebody who's under 18 years old. That's what an infant is in the eyes of the court, etc. Right? And if there is a will, you're going to have to file the will, and the executor can make this application. And if there's no executor, the alternate can. Okay? And once you prove who you are, you sign the affidavit, you pay the filing fee, the clerk's going to give you a file number, and eventually you're going to get something called letters of voluntary administration, which you can bring to the bank, and the bank will allow you to get control over that asset, provided the asset is not over $50,000. Sometimes the court will put some sort of limitation on those voluntary letters of administration. I've seen that happen before. Now, there's one thing you should know. Once you become the voluntary administrator, first of all, you should never write anything that is untrue in the affidavit, right? Unfortunately, that happens a lot, but you shouldn't. And you shouldn't commit any kind of fraud or try to play any kind of trick on the court. Unfortunately, I've seen that happen as well, right? There is a program with the Kings County Service Court, that's the court here in Brooklyn on 2 Johnson Street, where attorneys will help you go through this process. And I suppose to get that information about that program, you can go onto the New York Court's website and click on Kings County Service Court and call the administration department. And I think they can help you with that. All right. Okay. Now, what happens if there is no will, but the dead person, the decedent owned more than $50,000? Then you're going to go through what's something that's called administration. All right. And there you're going to bring a certified death certificate once again, and you're going to get a funeral bill or a cremation bill that's marked paid. It's going to say paid on the funeral bill. And you're going to present that to the court and maybe some other documents that the court's going to ask you for later. All right. The other thing you're going to do is that you got to obtain jurisdiction over all the parties, which means that you're going to have to get documents signed by all of the distributees, all of those what we would call heirs, but they're really called distributees, and they're going to have to waive service of process. I know I'm getting in the weeds here, or they're going to receive a citation, which is process for them to respond, or gives them an opportunity to respond to the court. Hopefully, you can get everybody to sign waivers and consents. All right. Now, there's a filing fee that is scaled to the value of the estate, which it can go up to $1,250, right? And you might have to file, you're probably going to have to get a bond, which also might cost at least that amount as well, right? And it's the same kind of people can apply for this. First is the surviving spouse. If there's no surviving spouse, children, if no children, grandchildren, either parents, brothers or sisters, or any other distributee. And if there are none of those, the city's going to take it up. The county's going to take it up. And that's called the public administrator. Okay? So once again, if you have an estate that's under $50,000, you don't have to go through this process, and you can pay $1 and not have to serve people on all that other stuff. All right? But if you have something over $50,000, you're going to have to go through this administration process. And if there's a will, that means the person died testate, and you're going to go to try to get letters testamentary, right? And you're going to have to file a petition. And you're going to have to file with the original will, a death certificate, a certified death certificate, and other documents will be required as well. And once again, you're going to have to get jurisdiction over all the parties by either getting those waivers of consent or either serving that citation on all people who are quote unquote interested in the state, people who have an interest in the state. Once again, there's going to be a filing fee, which a sliding scale filing fee, which might be up to $1,250 for states over $500,000. And oftentimes wills say that you don't have to file a bond. They usually do. All right. And so there might not be a bond. All right. And then when that whole process is complete, hopefully the surrogate will say that the will is okay. It's what the decedent wanted, and you'll get letters of testimony, and that will allow you to transfer property. Now, with letters of testamentary and letters of administration, you have to wait 7 months before you can distribute property to the heirs or the distributors. Right? 7 months you have to wait, because creditors have a time to make a claim against the estate. They have 6 months to try to make a claim against the estate. All right? And that's about all I have to say. I know I said all.
Them
$1 though. if you do the voluntary administration.
Get your dollar there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Antar. Very informative.
All right, manager.
I know there are a lot of questions in the chat on the Facebook group. We're going to ask them at the end of all the presentations. So keep putting in your questions, and we will get to them at the end of the program. At this time, I would like to introduce the Honorable Harriet Thompson. She is one of two judges presiding over estate matters in Kings County Supreme Court. She's known as the surrogate of Kings Court. She was elected to that position in 2018 and has jurisdiction over probate and estate matters, including small estates, accounting, administration, guardianship, will filing, and the public administrator's office. The Honorable Judge Thompson was previously a judge of the civil court, having been elected in 2010, where she sat in 2 counties, New York and in Kings, covering such matters as no fault, civil claims seeking money judgments up to $25,000, and small claims up to $5,000. Judge Thompson was elevated to acting Supreme Court Justice in 2016, where her duties included such matters such as settlement conferences, appointment of referees, motion practice, and supervision of discovery and trial matters in foreclosure cases. Judge Thompson also previously served as treasurer of the Kings County Housing Court Bar Association, recording secretary for the Judicial Friends Association, and member of TransUnion. She is currently a longstanding member of the Brooklyn Bar Association, the Brooklyn Women's Bar Association, the National Association of Women Judges, the Judicial Friends Association, and a member of the National Association of Law Enforcement Executives. Judge Thompson is a lifetime member of the YWCA and the YMCA, and a host of other local community organizations. Judge Thompson, it is such a pleasure to have you here as a panelist to present to us on the court process during COVID, what applications can be made pro se, the duration of this process, what court assistance can be provided for those who want to file on their own, especially in this COVID virtual world. Thank you, Judge Thompson.
Thank you so much for a great introduction. I do appreciate that always. I know those are some tongue twisters, so I appreciate what you said. I just want to thank you, Ms. Cordes, for allowing me the brief opportunity to address the people that are in the audience. And I would like to really do a special acknowledgement to Ms. Lancaster. I always learn something from panelists. I think that you said some really wonderful things. And I do have to give a great shout out to Antar Jones. He serves on many of my guardianships, and he is exemplary. He does a really good job. But not only is he smart and capable, but he's a compassionate human being. You cannot really participate in this area unless you love people. If you don't love people, don't even bother, because it really is sometimes a very, very, very heavy burden. I am going to try to be as brief as possible because the surrogate court is a really big court, and it really involves a lot of things. I could talk on small administrations for an hour. I could talk on administration. I could talk about the public administrator's office. I could really go on ad nauseum, but let me just give you a very general view and to at least answer some of the questions that have been posed. I believe that Ms. Cordes talks about the structure of the court. We talked about administration. That's when you die without a will, obviously, and probate with a will. Also, a very big part of our process is the accounting part of our court, because people that die with heirs that are unknown, many people do more than what you think they do. The public administrator's office gets involved. That's a big office, a big responsibility for those people who they don't know who the heirs are. Some people die at 90, 100. Everybody's going with them. So that becomes a very, very, very big part of the process of settling a decedent's estate. Many people die in nursing homes with no family. They die in the street. We know that some homeless are killed and die in the street. Remember, those people have rights too. And you would not believe how many of those people are wealthy, more than you think, that are homeless, that have a lot of money. Some trust babies, meaning they inherited a lot of money from their parents. Sometimes they know it. Sometimes they don't know that they're wealthy. But they die in the street nonetheless. We have people that obviously are murdered, correct? Those people that you hear die in the prisons. Those are all involved in the public administrator's office. The guardianships are very critical to the operation of the court. The guardianships, as you heard Mr. Jones talk about, if it's anyone under 18 years of age to get money, and I see a lot of money. I mean, sometimes 100,000, $500,000. They get annuities. They get all types of money given to them when they're at birth. Sometimes it could be 5, 6, 7, 10, on up to 18. Those are some very different types of cases, sometimes very emotional. Some of the cases involved in that area. I see a lot of theft. Parents steal their children's money, and yes, they do. And I believe firmly that I am the guardian of those children, the guardian of their rights, the one who protects their rights from their parents and for others. There are two types of cases in the guardianship part. The ones where you get the money before you're an adult, and others where the children are disabled. As I often talk about with my court attorney and others, how much that area touches my spirit and my heart because of the nature of the children, the disabilities that they have, how they're taken care of. There's been a whole myriad of changes in what the actual 17A proceedings involve, because some people operate at a higher level, for example, of autism, whereas others do not. Our miscellaneous department is really a really important department. And then I want to go into answering some of the questions. I wanted to give a pretty much of an overview from the judicial point of view. The probate deals with those people that I consider have their house in order. They die. We know where things are. And a lot of us know that are Southerners. We hide stuff all the time. People from the islands do the same thing. We should be telling our family members where are our important documents. We don't want to be looking under the bed, inside of the code, on top of this bureau. There should be in a file where everything is there. Just as Ms. Lancaster said, make it accessible. Have your policies together. Have any of your deeds to your property should be together. Any mortgage satisfaction you paid off. Your lease. Don't mean you have to own property, but your lease, your co-op proprietary lease, and other important documents, they should all be in one place. If you were a city or state employee, your pension or your pension papers should be in one place, right? We don't want to look through the house looking for it. And I know a lot of us like to hide money. Don't keep money in your house if you can avoid it. A little bit for emergencies, but don't keep no $15,000, $20,000 in your house. Please don't do that, because that's subject to someone taking it, right? We want to trust our family members, but not everybody is trustworthy, and we all know that. So I want you to be very cognizant of that. Our miscellaneous department is a very big department. It handles all the catch-all cases where you're saying, Judge, please remove a restriction. And just so you'll know, as your surrogate, I restrict nearly, and I would probably say 95% of the real estate in the borough. Judge, why would you do that? Well, I'm glad you asked. All of the deed theft in our county, all of it, nearly all of it, comes from people that own property. And when I tell you I've seen every scam, every player from every walk of life in this area, all the way from your air chasers, all the way to those that go, hey, listen, you're in Florida. I'll give you $50,000 for the interest in your property. What happens? They get the interest. They come up because those people don't know the value of the properties here. They don't know that a house in Bed-Stuy is worth $1.8, $1.5 million. So you're giving away your interest to somebody that you don't know. Sometimes we borrow those respective interests. We have cash out. I can tell you some of the items that I have uncovered by really just sitting and reading the files. That's why I tell my staff, I read every file. Every human being that sits on this office, I guard their property as if it was my own. So I think I've given a pretty much over. We have the cashier's office, we have the record room. Those things are important, but those are the major ones that we deal with. Do a lot of volume. I want all of you to remember 10,495,000 people died in the County of Kings. That's a lot of souls. We normally have 9,000 or more filings a year. So look at what it did. It doubled. This court is overwhelmed right now and understaffed. We're down 28% in our staff in this court. And it's a really powerful situation that we're attempting to work with each and every day. Let me go in and just answer two of the questions. First, what applications can be made by pro se? When you say that someone is pro se, that means they don't have the benefit of an attorney, self-represented. Every proceeding you can file without the benefit of an attorney. But look at what the primary questions are in our community. Who has access to broadband? Who has access to the internet? Are they elderly? Are they young? Can they work it? I have issues with the technology, and I'm a little old, but ain't that old, right? So just understand that a lot of people do not understand how to deal with the internet, how to deal with the papers. Come down to the surrogate court. We are open at this point, but we're limited in the terms of the number of people because of the increase in the spike now in the Delta virus, right? So we want to make certain that we come down safe, we follow the protocols. You know, I still do 6 feet plus the mask. People that are inoculated, if they want to take the chance, they're welcome to do so. I won't. I have a pre-existing condition. So I know that I would never take that chance unless I have to. All of the proceedings you can e-file. But sometimes people want to just be here. They want to see you. They want to talk to a clerk. They want a human being. Not everybody is into the internet. So we have to be very cognizant of that fact. But all of the proceedings that we just talked about, Mr. Lancaster, but Mr. Jones, as well as myself, those matters can be filed by e-filing. Go onto our website, I believe it's been posted, and follow the prompts. But I always recommend, if you can, to come down if at all possible. There's a human touch there. The head of the administration department, Lisa Mathis, is excellent. She's a human. She's very gracious. She really, truly, truly serves the public in no way that I have seen. And I think there's a dedication in that department that you need with most of our people in the African American and Caribbean community, and even in other communities, that really need a hands-on approach, because it looks a little simple, but it's not. Some lawyers don't even get it down. They have to resubmit, correct, Mr. Jones, resubmit. So when you have a human being there who gives you a special touch that they're gonna help you, please take advantage of it and do come down if you're able. The duration of the process, it varies, as you just heard me tell you. We got 20,000 filings, right? 1 year, 10,000 people died in Kings, 495 souls, plus our regular. Are we behind? Absolutely. We're understaffed? Absolutely. But that staff that we do have, they really work very, very hard in that department. Big department, the administration department. So that can take sometimes anywhere from an emergency. I get them out the moment that the clerks give them to me, but if they're being processed downstairs, I don't know. I can only get what they bring up, and I get files from every department every day. I tell people often that if you don't want to work, this is not the court for you. This is a work all day. I don't leave here most nights until 8, 9. I stay until the work is done, or my body says, okay, that's enough. It's time to go home. I'm committed to the service in the court and to my respective communities. So it could be an emergency, 30 days, all the way to a year, depending on if you got it right or if you got it wrong, or if there was any problems. One of the biggest problems that we have, which Mr. Jones indicated, is being honest and then putting all the distributees. So if you don't list, the distributees, meaning, I'll give you a quick example. If you know that he was married and the first wife died, and you have another marriage, you got to list everybody, not just your children. We had one that happened today, same issue. You know, she got caught out there. It wasn't a good scene. They felt that she was being deceitful to the court, had to fight, amend, and finally we got them back on the right track. So it can be a lengthy process. I will not deceive you, nor will I ever not tell you the truth. The court assistants for who you want to file on their behalf in the virtual world, that I recommend that it only be a family member. Unless you do not have citizenship in this country, you can designate someone. So if I wanted to designate, for example, another family member, if I was from, let's say from Barbados or from Jamaica, and I'm not an American citizen and I'm the only person that's left in the family that's up here, I can designate somebody. I can say, well, my cousin who lives in Brooklyn, I'm going to designate her to bring the papers on my behalf. I think I'm beyond my time. As I tell you, this is a subject matter that Mr. Jones and I, and even Ms. Lancaster, who I just met, and really learned so much from her, that it takes time. This is a very, very big subject matter. We could talk about all the intricacies, the type of case, but because of time, as a judge, I'm going to yield back to Ms. Cordes. Thank you very much. You're on mute.
Sorry. Yes. Thank you. Yes.
I'll mute.
I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I just wanted to make sure that we should mute.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. So the role of the guardian, the surrogate, is to stand guard for everyone. She stands guards for the children, the homeless, the unrepresented, the represented, the rich, the poor, everyone. She stands at the door to ensure that there is proper distribution, accurate distribution, honest distribution. So thank you, Judge Thompson, for that brief introduction into what goes on in the court system. I do appreciate that. In terms of questions that we have coming in from the Facebook page, one of the viewers wanted to know, can they have more than one policies? And if those policies, life insurance policies that is, and if those policies can be used towards the funeral expense. Ms. Lancaster, you discussed,
Yes. So the answer is yes, you can have more than one policy. And usually we would say, what's your insurable interest? Quick calculation, it's usually about 20 times your income, 20 to 27 times your income. So yes, you can have multiple policies. And yes, you can assign one of them or many policies to cover that funeral cost to the funeral home. I always guard against it. As I said before, please negotiate the cost first.
thank you. My other question that I saw in the Facebook group, people wanted to know, just to repeat, Mr. Jones, if you can provide us just a brief guide as to who are entitled to apply for letters of administration when there is no will. Who are the first 2 or 3, if you can just tell us so that they're clear.
Okay, it's a great question. So it's a list, and it goes in order. So it goes in priority. The first person is always going to be the spouse. So if there's a spouse that's alive, they get to apply first. And if there's no spouse, or if the spouse says, I don't want to do it, then it's any of the children. And if there are no children and there's no spouse, then it's the grandchildren. Or if there are no grandchildren or no grandchild wants to do it, it's going to be either parent, right? And if it's of the dead person, right? And if there are no parents, or the parents don't want to do it, or they can't do it, then it's going to be the brothers and sisters. And that's usually about where it goes. And if nobody, the list does go on a bit, but if there's no family member, once again, as the surrogate said, then it's going to fall to the public administrator, who in most counties in the state of New York, certainly all 5 boroughs, there's a public administrator's office, or there's a public administrator, and they take on everybody who doesn't have a relative or who doesn't claim the estate of a dead person.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
May I just interject one thing? I wanted to give full hope because as Mr. Jones indicated, the index number for any property, for example, that's owned in Brooklyn, almost every property is over $500,000, so over $500,000. There is a process whereby you can seek poor persons relief, because not everybody have $1,250. They just lost a family member. They just don't have that kind of money. I want you to know that you can apply for what's called poor persons relief. Don't be embarrassed. Don't be shamed. People with money do that because sometimes they don't have it right away. So know that I deal with those applications. I do deal with them often enough, and I try to be as generous as possible, but you have to substantiate that you don't have the money. Sometimes if I know the property will ultimately be sold, I tell any of the applicant, the one who's trying to become an administrator or an executor, I will defer it until you sell the property. So I just wanted to give you some hope on that number. That scares a lot of people.
So in terms of getting assistance to have that application completed, can someone come into the surrogate's court at this time to get such assistance?
Yes, they can. The only thing that they have to do when they come in to apply, whether or not it's from probate or administration, they can apply to me and that application comes up to me separately. They do require you to fill out all the paperwork. And one of the things that Mr. Jones had talked about was some of the things that you have to present, the funeral bill, death certificate, but you also have to fill out an asset and liability statement where you're affirming, remember, all of these are sworn statements. That's what an affidavit truly is. You have to be able to say, this is what the decedent owned that we know of. This is what the mortgage is, because most of the time, we have to open up the mail and see what's going on. If we're not connected, people that are connected, they know all this information. Once they fill that out and they fill out as much as they can of the application, that application for letters plus the application for poor persons relief comes to my desk. I review it. I require your identification. I want you to tell me if you're on public assistance of any kind. If you're unemployed, what are you making yearly? You need to be able to demonstrate that you cannot afford this particular index number. I think they're closing us down.
Oh no, that is just a slide to bring us to the resource. We're still live, my apologies.
Okay.
We're just getting to the slide that will have some additional resources for persons who need assistance in completing either their application for voluntary administration or letters of administration, because we are aware that most persons may not be able to afford not just the fee for the filing, but also the attorney's fee. So we have provided a list of resources that we will post so that persons can contact those agencies and organizations for assistance. So just before we begin to wrap up this evening, I want to thank my panelists. And we just check to see if we have any other questions in the chat. 1 second. Okay, I don't see any over here. Yes. So I don't see any further questions in the chat or on the Facebook page. So I just wanted to say a heartfelt thank you to Ms. Rhonda Lancaster of Life for providing such valuable information. And she gets an applause from the judge. I will join Your Honor in applauding Ms. Lancaster for such concise information. I do believe she did reference in the chat that New York Life has a life folio checklist. If you can post the link for that checklist in the chat, Ms. Lancaster, we would appreciate
It's
it.
actually there. It's above, and it just all it did was speak on what the judge was list what the judge was speaking about. The list of documents and where they are. It's something you can put in that panty drawer, and like Caribbean people usually do. They have that thing there so that someone will find it. You don't want to go looking through your personal documents.
Yes, definitely. So that was a good reminder. If you have parents from the Caribbean, not just the Caribbean, but if you have parents, family, friends, relatives, anyone that you know that might be senior who have a habit of putting things under the bed, in the closet, sticking it in their Bibles, now would be a good time to have that conversation with them as to the importance of one, placing all of your important documents in one place, and secondly, placing them in a secure place. And then thirdly, letting someone important, your prospective executor and administrator know where those documents are. It's all well and good if we have it in a secure place, but no one knows where it is, that it doesn't help us. So just
Curtis, sorry.
Pardon?
Sorry. Yes, the
ahead,
actual
Ms. Lancaster.
checklist. The checklist is above my text. It actually lists it, and it has a portion that says location. So it doesn't matter where you have it. At least you can have it listed. It's in that, it's under the bed, it's wherever, so that people know if you don't want to put it together. And you have that document in one place, so it's right above.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, so if you're following us, please check in the chat for that link to the live folio from New York Life. Also, if you need to reach Ms. Lancaster, her information is in the chat. There's a link that you can.
We can hear you.
Yeah, you're breaking up.
You're breaking up, Melnia.
Click on it. Will take you to New York.
We can't hear you now.
We can't hear you, but we're all on mute now.
Bio information. We also will have that slide on the screen shortly that you can collect her information to Ms. Lancaster if you're interested to life insurance policy and deceased person and their policy. Mr. Andrew Jari, moderator, I can hear if they have an interjection. Your Honor, you can unmute also. Thank you. So Mr. Jones for agreeing to participate in our panel and for providing us such concise and accurate information with respect to the process to obtain voluntary administration, letters of administration, and letters testamentary. Mr. Jones come to us today with a wealth of knowledge and experience in this area of law, and as the Honorable Thompson indicated, he's also part of several of the panels and the court guardianships and senior estates and administration assistant. So Mr. Jones, thank you for your information that you've imparted to us and for agreeing to participate on the panel today. Your Honor, a special thank you also to you for agreeing to be a part of this very informative program. Your knowledge and patience has really been appreciative. I am sure that everyone who's here viewing the program has learned something new about the surrogate and the compassion level that is required to act in that role. I mean, I was listening to you and I personally felt that emotion and that dedication that is required to stand as a guard and at the door when someone is applying for administration. We all know that Brooklyn has been rife with a lot of fraud with respect to senior citizens, and it is very laudable that we have someone here who is committed to ensuring that assets of the state go to the right spheres and distributed. So thank you, Your Honor. It was a pleasure, and I look forward to working with you in the future for further panels and for further information.
I would love to come back, so please put me on
Also, on behalf of myself and WIACA, I want to say heartfelt thanks to the viewers and to our moderator. I also want to say thank you to Melissa John for assisting us with the links and managing the chat room for both the Facebook and the Instagram page. Our upcoming series, The Law and You, will continue in September. It's usually on the third Wednesday of the month. We will post topic and the date on the WIACA's Facebook page. You will also find that information on my Instagram. It's Cordis Law. If you have any questions or you need additional information, feel free to reach out to me. My website is melniacordislaw.com. Also, Mr. Antar Jones' website is listed in the chat, and we will have that slide up on the screen shortly. So, Mr. Moderator, could you put the slide on with the contact information for Mr. Jones, please? Yes, so you can reach Mr. Jones at 718-636-2270. His office is at 444 Grand Avenue, Brooklyn, New York, 11236.
That has changed, but you can call me at 636-2270.
Okay. So can you also show us the screen for the resources? If anyone needs additional assistance with respect to applying for voluntary administration or letters of administration or probate, you can contact any one of these offices, including the Brooklyn Bar Association. They have a volunteer lawyers project where they assist persons who are low-income means to obtain and apply for letters of administration or probate. So once again, thank you for joining us. It was a pleasure, and I will see you all at the next Law and You. Have a great evening.
Be well, and God bless you and stay safe.